First of all, why has man given such importance to pleasure? Why man throughout the world has given this extraordinary importance to pleasure? Why? Continuing, pursuing everlasting pleasure. mundo entero. Mundo entero.
Do it. thought you said you were through. But I know what you're gonna do. Hiding all the time, lying in my mind, think we're through. How we gonna live, keep doing this shit we do? Cause I thought you were down with me. Get up. You used to go to bed with me. Get up. Staying out late, getting high, getting hard for free. Gotta let you go when you know that it's hard on me.
su carne y abrigo. Allá en una plaza, sobre la vereda, guañán en el río, menos si lo ves coqueando por su Pachamama. Él bajó del cerro a vender su lana, a vender sus cueros, a llevar su harina, a buscar su azúcar. Y es tan precavido que trajo su plata y hasta su comida y no te pide nada. No te rías, mucoya, que está en la frontera, al lado de la tierra, allá en las alturas de la Madrecenta. Ten presente, amigo, que él será el primero en parar las patas cuando alguien se atreva a violar la casa. No te rías, mucoya, si pegues baja al cerro, te abrirá las puertas de su triste casa. Te dará su chicha, te dará su hueso, y junto a sus guaguas comerás su pulpo, y a cambio de nada. No te rías de un colla que busque el silencio, que en medio de las lajas cultiva su sábado, que en las montañas donde no hay nada, así sobrevive con su Pachamama. Gracias.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening.
Dang, totally not.
So,
Hey, what's up, everybody? Coming to you live, Grove Sessions. Ian, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Awesome.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, man. Thank you for being here. Thanks for spinning that set, man. Really nice way to end the week. Super appreciate it. How's everybody doing? Welcome to Grove Sessions. Everybody? We're keeping it loose on Friday.
Oh yeah.
Grove Sessions. I'm getting some feedback apparently too.
Great.
Awesome.
Is that for me?
Yeah, man. Thank you for being here. Thanks for spinning that set, man.
Lovely.
Really
Yeah,
nice
it
way to
might
end
be.
the week. Super appreciate it. How's it? There we go.
Nice.
This is the problem with tab management. This is sometimes when you go live, you go live.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, welcome to Grove Sessions, everybody. Friday edition. We're here with Waylau. We're super pumped that you're here. We're going to fire a bunch of questions at you. We're going to talk about live music. We're going to talk about original music, DJ music. We're going to talk about all kinds of things. So really
Awesome.
looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, thanks so much for letting me spin today, guys.
Yeah, for those of you just joining us, Waylau is an Ann Arbor producer, musician, DJ, massive supporter of Southeast Michigan music scene, doing a lot of cool stuff, making some great great music under the Waylau moniker, and we're gonna dig in and talk a little bit about that stuff today. You know, let's talk about the set a little bit. And I mean, you did a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of chill stuff, very cool. What Tell us a little bit about the music that you played, and maybe why you chose it, and then let's definitely talk about where people can listen to your stuff too.
Yeah. So this was kind of a throwback set for me, digging through a lot of my uh, much older music. Uh, I wanted it to be a little bit more chill. Lately, what I've been rocking, if you've seen any of my SoundCloud posts, it's a lot more like techno, warehouse techno, and quarantine is just not that. It's a little bit more chill. I think everyone, or at least everyone I know, has been looking for more of just a uh, introspective vibe, and that's kind of what I was going for. Is more of my deep house or new disco stuff, which is a lot more chill. Yeah, that's kind of what I was digging for.
Yeah, that makes
Got a little
sense.
weird there, but whatever.
I like that. Have you been using music to help get through this quarantine?
Absolutely. Um, I spoke with one of ironically my idols over the past few days, lead singer of You Me and Everyone We Know, and we talked a lot about just there's people who like music, and then there's people who need music, and for me it's definitely I need music to stay sane. So this past quarantine and any second I'm not working at the hospital, it's if there's not music playing, I'm usually stressing out.
Wow, you
Yeah.
work at the hospital, man. That's amazing. Thank you so much. You want to talk a little bit about that?
um I wish there was more to say other than that. I work in a clinic that it's neurosurgery, so we deal with the people who, even though there's quarantine, uh, if they don't go to a uh, a doctor's appointment, it's a lot more high risk for them. So uh, I wouldn't, I want to give shout out to the people on the front lines, the ER workers. I got buddies in New York right now helping out there. I'd love to say that I was on the front lines, but I'm not. I think I've said this to Eric 3 or 4 times. I'm more midlines, but it's we all are just trying to pull for the same thing, which is to get us out of this quarantine, keep social distancing, etc.
Yeah, we really appreciate you doing that, man. And shout out to all the frontline workers out there and all the midline workers. Everyone's still going to work, keeping this world going, especially Eric. Shout out to Eric. He's working
Yeah,
right now.
thank you so much, Eric.
But you played some original music, you played some other people's music. How would you describe your original music and vibe to someone who hasn't heard it before?
That that is actually a question that has stumped me for probably 10 years or more. So I'm going to probably answer it very poorly. Um, I Lately I've been thinking of myself kind of like an octopus where I've got arms and everything. I know you guys know that I play live music as well as DJ and produce.
Mhm.
So I've really got music coming out in a plethora of genres. With Waylau, I oddly tend between chill out stuff, which is like semi breakbeat esque, weird vibes, and like heavy production, into my latest tracks, which have been a lot more techno and house music. So as far as a direct genre, I don't know if there is one, but I like to keep it weird. So hopefully that comes through in whatever I'm putting out.
Yeah, yeah, no, I like that, and I especially really like that chill. Like, I love like house and techno music and stuff, but that chill breakbeat style that you do is sick. I remember that one song you put out, Contingency, like 4 months ago. Super dope. I think that was probably like the first song I heard from you, but that was really sweet. Um, you talk about playing other instruments and stuff. How'd you first get into music? What'd you pick up first?
The first thing I picked up was my dad's guitar. It was a 64 Gresh um, something red. It was red.
It was a Gretsch. That's all that matters, right? That's sweet.
And I would I played a lot by ear. I never was taught how to play guitar formally, and so I'd pick out Beatles riffs whenever I had free time. And then obviously Ann Arbor Public Schools has had a great, or has and had a great music program, um, pushing us into instruments. I picked up the cello in 5th grade, moved on to the bass in 6th grade because no one else wanted to play it. And, of course, I was like, I want to be in a band. So, um,
The world
on from
needs more
there,
good bass players, by the way. Don't you agree?
yeah, absolutely. And from there, I just kind of picked up everything. I took a year or two of piano when I was 12 or 13, and which everyone should do. Everyone should take piano because you learn a little bit of every clef and music theory and isolation, so you can use different parts of the body, uh, isolate them. And from there, I don't know, kept picking up instruments. Yeah.
I mean, I'm always impressed by that. I've learned a little piano myself, but I'm a terrible piano player. I'm a
Yeah, me
terrible
too.
drummer. I'm pretty much terrible at everything, including guitar. But I I literally, like, I wouldn't sit into a live music situation in any instrument other than guitar. I just wouldn't. And so I'm always impressed with people that can do that. Um, I think that's a key indicator of some talent. Um, it's just
Absolutely.
like I'm a one trick pony. So I think it's amazing that you do all this, not to mention the fact that that you are in, you do electronic music and you have all these compositions that you've got on SoundCloud. It's really, I really enjoy listening to your stuff as well. So, um, like, as far as the music goes, though, you really are kind of all over the map in terms of just what you can do, right? Like, you're multi-instrument. I mean, we can see from your home studio, you've got all kinds of gear there that I can see a bass in the background.
Yeah.
So, like, what are your musical inspirations? I mean, what drives you towards these different genres? Because you play in a band, you got the electronic stuff going on, you've got multiple instruments. What's your, I mean, maybe current, right? Current, because we all have
Yeah.
current ones, or what
Um,
drove you to music first, where you're like, oh, I want to do this.
I th- so my wife is gonna die laughing when I say this, but I think it's my ADD.
Yeah.
Um,
Me
A lot of
too.
musicians could probably relate to that.
I I don't know. I like, obviously in school and everything. I would always get bored, and music never was boring. There was always someone doing it differently, or and like, I think that's a huge pull that I have from electronic music, is everyone is doing it differently with the same tools. Uh, so yeah, that's kind of led me to, like, I love jazz. A lot of my biggest inspiration is was my dad's record collection, and that was all like classic rock and classical music. So obviously 90% of the time I thought that was totally uncool, but 10% of the time I'd find great bands. Like a huge inspiration is Grand Funk Railroad. The first one of the first CDs I ever bought was Black Sabbath, and so I mean I've got late roots or old roots tied in there, um, but it's really just there's so many different sounds with the same instruments. I just can't stick in one place.
Yeah, I like
So,
that. I think that's a good point, right? Like we're all kind of using the same tools, but what comes out depending on your frame of reference is it can really like just vary widely, you know. Um, yeah, you mentioned Grand Funk Railroad. That's good old school stuff, man. So it sounds like a classic rock is like an influence back in there. I think a lot of us can identify with that, you know,
all pentatonic
dad,
scales
yeah,
and
that
everything.
dad record collection kind of thing. I was joke like if you're talking about classic rock, how, you know, AC/DC basically made the same album like 15 times and nobody cared because it just all rocked, right? It's just
Yeah, yeah.
it's one of those, unless you hate AC/DC, which is it's a different story entirely, but you know, it's like three power chords and maybe a
Yeah,
bridge if you're lucky, but
if only if
um
you're lucky.
that's cool. So like so when did electronic music really start for you? I mean, obviously you just had that early, you know, kind of school influence of the, you know, being in school instrument, you know, ensembles and things like that, but when did you go, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do the DJ thing."
Um, I don't actually. I don't remember when I started DJing. I definitely found electronic music. I don't even know, forever ago, and I remember listening to some Jay Dilla, but I was also learning how to get into hip hop because I love hip hop, but no one around me was into it. So it was just like this um, never ending struggle to find hip hop that I enjoyed. Uh, I mean, I can't even tell you. Back when I was finding hip hop, I couldn't even tell you what I was listening to just because I wasn't paying attention. Thanks, ADD, for all that fun stuff. But getting up into probably like 2003, 2004, uh, I found some Daft Punk, which I think everyone has found at some point in their life. And then, especially in 2008 and 2009, when their live mixes came out, I started to say, like, wow, here is someone taking their album and then completely redoing it live. Whether or not they rehearsed exactly that set or not, who cares? But it was just like that new way of thinking about it. Like, hey, here's synthesizers, and now I'm gonna start pressing buttons and chop it all up, and do more and do more and do more. And Dilla did the same thing. It was like, I'm gonna take this stuff, chop it up, do more and do more and do more. Uh, kind of like a loop pedal is just putting that all in your own hands to sample yourself was just really um, intoxicating. So I found myself doing the same thing, and here I am, still working on an album. But uh, you know, that's what it is.
Yeah, electronic music is super dope that way, and it really just encompasses, you know, all genres. Kind of, it's such a wide genre of music. Who are some of your favorite EDM artists?
Ooh, there's a lot. Um, Obviously, I think some of my favorite two. There's two classes. There's my favorite to watch, and then there's my favorite to like break their production style. if that makes any sense. I they're the people that mix or like Kink plays live incredibly. Kink. He his live setup is geared around just like being playful. He'll have like a little keyboard and loop a part, make his drum part, and everything he's doing is fully live, fully created. He even geniusly came up with a way to loop a record that's at 133.3 BPM. He did a little piece of with a little piece of scotch tape, which is insane to me. But so like watching him is I get totally different inspiration than watching someone like Mephews who does neurofunk and drum and bass, and they have just gotten playful in digital audio workspace where you take a sine wave and filter and saturate and filter and saturate and resample and resample and resample, and they end up with like this frequency bending sound that you couldn't ever rationally come up with without play. So I don't know, Matthews, Kink, a lot of the Detroit artists, Jeff Mills, KMS Records. I got some good buddies there. DJ Holographic. If
DJ
anybody watches
Holographic. So
this,
I actually
yeah.
went to Dime with her for like a year.
Yeah,
She played at I saw her play at Movement too. She's awesome.
yeah, good. She's a good friend of mine. She never stopped working ever, ever, and every day that anytime I've ever hung out with her, never stopped working. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a good list, man. We talked about how your music can be super chill at times and other times, it's very energetic. Would you say that your music is a reflection of your personality? What does your music say about you? Do you try and kind of put yourself into your music?
I do. With this conversation that I had with his name's Ben, actually yesterday, was I try to take the music to show the vulnerability that I have, and the more I can put those feelings into music, it's more like a cleansing of the soul. So hopefully, and I don't know if my music shows it, but I what I aim for is like I'm weird. I play around a lot, and it's all playful, and yeah, I like to jam out and rock out heavy, but like it's just all weird. I hope that kind of comes through.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, absolutely. It definitely comes through. And I'm a producer as well. And I love talking about, how different producers do their thing. What program do you usually use when you're producing?
So I started with Fruity Loops back in 2009, and I've now moved into Ableton. The workflow is just a lot smoother, and I don't know. It feels a lot more open to resampling and looping, which is where I found like my connection to my production style, which is what I said before. I do greatly miss Fruity Loops though. So
Do you ever go back and use it, make a beat, or no turning back now?
I plan on it 100% until Ableton gets keyboard. So in the piano roll in Ableton, when you input a note, it doesn't preview it. I don't know why, but it doesn't. And in Fruity Loops, it did. So like you could dial in some of your notes. I've kind of gotten past it, but it definitely made like piano roll programming a lot simpler.
Mhm.
And their sample, it had when you put a sample into a new track into Fruity Loops, they had a sequencer, so you could like right away sequence that sample, and you could put swing on it. You can do it in Ableton. It's just a little bit harder, and it's more out of the way. So
Yeah, it's tough when you learn, one way to do something, and that because you can do like the same things on all the different platforms, but
Yep.
it's just you learn one way. That's because I started producing on. I think I tried Fruity Loops when I was like in middle school or something, but I started producing on Ableton, and I've never really switched just because of the ease of use, to do everything
Yeah,
that I do.
it's very powerful. It definitely was uh, the right, like when I switched over, probably 2 or a year and a half ago. Uh, it was the only choice to make. It does everything better than Fruity Loops did, um, except for those 1, 2 quirky things that I loved using.
Do you have any specific production or mixing tips or tricks that you've come across over the years that have really helped take your music to the next level? Because definitely, when I listen to your music, it it has a very professional sound to it. It doesn't. I don't know if you're doing all the mixing and mastering and everything, but it sounds really good, man. Is there anything specific that you've learned that might be able to help, an aspiring producer or someone new?
Um, well, first of all, thank you, because that's like, honestly, I haven't gotten a lot of feedback from anything I've done. So to hear that it does sound professional means that I'm kind of getting to the right place, right? Uh, I definitely think making sure that your every track you've got in there is under 0 dBs uh, is really helpful, because when you go to master it, you have room to bring levels up. Uh, Actually, all this mastering stuff, which don't get me wrong, I am no pro at this. I'm still learning, but all this mixing mastering stuff as far and as and everything that I'm working on in the studio, tips, tricks, I'm going to be putting into a podcast. Uh,
Mm.
I just kind of documenting everything I'm trying, so that hopefully someone behind me who wants to get into this doesn't have to make all the same mistakes I make getting there. Uh, and so, like, definitely mixing with all your tracks softer. You can always turn your monitors up, but mix low, because when you master, you're going to be turning things up. And if they're already zeroed out and clipping almost, you have no room. You have no headroom. Uh, that definitely helped, as well as side chaining is
Mhm.
awesome, even if it's like super tiny. So I don't know.
Yeah, very cool. Um, when you're making a song, do you have a specific way that you approach it? Like, do you, do the beat first, or do you search for a cool sound, do some sound design? How do you approach making it?
This is actually a question that I've come back to probably 100 or 200 times, because I used to always approach from the beat. And whenever I did that, I would always come out with a song, but I'd always come out with a song that I wasn't like feeling. And so, in the back of my head, I would go, okay, that's the wrong way to do it, because it's not like flowing. And then I would come from it like only when I had inspiration, I would write a song. And then I'd end up with a bunch of things that had like 10 or 12 seconds of just like beautiful pieces of music. and it would never formulate into a song. So what I've started to do in the past year, especially, but I've been playing with for probably like 4 years now, is when you have that inspiration, just run with it. So like if it's being inspired by just like a single sound, I will run with that. And then that's that inspiration striking, right?
Yeah.
And so you just let it flow. But
Yeah.
when you don't have inspiration, sometimes you still need to work, because like especially right now in this quarantine, like you still got to stay sane, you still got to be practiced, you still got to go through the motions, so you're not letting your ears get lazy. And so I'll start with like making a good kick. And when your kick is good, that's, well, especially in dance music, if your kick is good, that's what everyone's hearing the most of, right? It's one of the most unchanging things in your dance track. And then you got your snare, making those good. You could spend 4 to 5 hours just working on a good kick and snare. And there's plethora of memes out there that say your snare still sounds like crap. So uh, I play with it a lot,
Yeah.
and I'm always questioning whether there's a right way, or the best way to start a track.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the flow and the inspiration kind of thing, you know, because I was the same way. I'm a drummer, and I play a little bit of keyboard, but really just melodies and stuff. So I would start a lot of the time creating a drum beat, but I would get locked into the same habits, the same patterns,
Yeah.
and it just wouldn't almost feel like authentic. But so now a lot of the times I'll just search for a sound, and then like I'll find that really, really sweet sound. And that's a fun process too, you know, just searching for the
Absolutely.
sounds, listening to these crazy sounds that these developers come up with. But and then just following that inspiration like to wherever it takes me. um so that's a really good point, man. um you know do you enjoy really making the music more, or playing it for other people, do you think?
That's probably the second hardest question you could possibly ask me.
We ask all the hard questions here on Grove Sessions.
I love it. It's something I need to definitely think about more. I don't know. They're two different worlds, really. I mean, I one of the things I love most, especially with the things that I have, is I love bringing my friends in here, and they're like, "Oh man, I'm not feeling great. Like I want to do something slow and dragging." And like we make that. It's like, "Okay, you want, what sound do you want? You want like that guitar, but it's looped 100 times so it sounds distorted and weird. Yeah, let's do that." Or like, "Here's a microphone. We can, you like the sound of your foot hitting the floor over there. Like, let's grab that." I like the idea of no limits when you're recording, and being playful in the recording studio, because that was something that was never really taught to me. Especially, I in high school I took some audio production classes, and we, like, our goal was like, "Hey, go out and record a song. Here's a recording studio." And no one said, "Hey, you can put that mic wherever the heck you want it and record the drum set." They said, "You put this snare mic here, the bass drum mic here." And so it was very like restricted. So now I'm in the studio and I'm able to, like, I've got mics, I've got interface. So if like I like my hand hitting the desk, that's, I'm gonna get that, and I want my friends to get that. So there's definitely a love that I have for bringing people together to produce something. At the same time, uh, it's a totally different feel and a different reward when you can go to a club or a venue and play tracks that just keep people moving and keep people smiling and dancing, or hopefully, as I said, in my style, I like people to be weird. So hopefully there's weird sounds that get them moving weird, and that's uh it's two different worlds, but I'm trying harder to join them together, especially with my own productions. This year especially has just been producing and getting music that I feel comfortable with playing in my sets, which I could never do before. So
I love that you mentioned like the playful part, right? I think some of us who tend to go into the studio, and I know I'm certainly guilty of like, okay, it's time to do the thing. We're going to do the thing, and we have a plan. We're going to do the thing, and some of the best stuff happens when you do like get kind of playful with it, right? Like, what if you put the mic over here? When you said that, I thought of one of our last recording sessions where we were recording with our friend Taylor Greenshields, who's T Greens as we call him, Fundamental Sound Company. He when we're not doing our thing at Grove Studios and doing recording there, we work with him, and we were doing a session, and I noticed a microphone like over in the corner, like on the floor, um, just like in the corner of the room. And I kind of almost stepped on it, and I went to move it, and he was like, no, 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 just leave that there. That's that's picking up an interesting vibe in the room. And I was like, it was one of those moments where I'd never seen anybody do that. It was just like, but it's that, but he's playful like that. And I like that you mentioned the playful part. Cause I think that's when, some of the happiest accidents happen, right? Like being open to that. And I kind of, I'm thinking back, like how you're talking about your ADD and stuff, where you might just have like this random idea, but then it turns out to be this amazing thing where
yeah,
that wouldn't have happened if you weren't open to that. Right.
absolutely. And like that mic specifically that you're talking about, no one thinks about that mic, but it's in everything. Uh, like the room sound is a microphone, not specifically picking up one thing. I think my favorite example of this is Phil Collins, when you get that like very iconic Phil Collins drum solo. Uh, it's actually just they've mic'd his drums, but then they also left the guy who came up with this left the room mic on that picks up the musicians when they're talking to the sound engineer. So he accidentally left that on when they were recording, and it ended up with this awesome sound that no one had heard before. So it's just those kind of playful things make your music 200%. And I want to keep finding those.
That's really cool. I didn't know that the story behind that sound.
It's been
I love
probably
stories
like
like that.
5 years since I read about that. So if I messed something up, I'm sorry. But
Eh, it's still a cool story.
yeah,
I love it, man. You know, I mean, we first met at Grove Studios, and one of the things I, connected with right away is that you're super enthusiastic about the local music scene, the Southeast Michigan kind of music scene, and um you're doing a lot of cool things. You mentioned that you're working on a podcast. I know you were excited about the podcast studio opening up.
oh yeah.
Definitely excited to have you give that a try. Um, what is it about the local music scene that inspires you the most? Um, you mentioned, being with friends and stuff like that. Is there anything that sticks out that really inspires you about the Southeast Michigan music scene? And or you can talk about Ann Arbor, Ypsi, Washtenaw County.
Yeah. I think what's inspired me most about it has been the group of people that I've found from it. Um, Man, what is it? 5 or 6 years ago now, I was DJing with Holographic, and um, that's my good friend Ariel and my buddy Ill Fusion or David. I've got, man, the list is ridiculously long. I shouldn't have started listing names.
And now you have to mention everybody you know and give them a
and
shout.
I'm gonna reverse that. I made a good group of friends, and what we started doing years ago was we would just get together and DJ, and we'd all bring our setups. It was like 8 or 10 DJs at a time, ridiculous. We'd all go 2 songs, and then like left deck, right deck, pass, left deck, and uh, as silly as it sounds, we ended up always just pushing each other and inspiring each other. And a good friend of mine said that we, when we were doing that, we would always bring a song to try and impress someone else in the group. Sounds kind of silly, but like it always kept everyone pushing. And I look at where we're all at now and the things that we're doing now, and we've all made massive strides. And when we were doing that together, obviously, the world tends to also pull us apart as much as it brings us together. So like, we're living in different areas. We don't get to get together every single Wednesday. It's now every few months, but we all talk to each other. And so the Southeast music scene really brought me to that. It showed me that even though social media seems to tear us all apart, when you're actually at the shows and you're meeting the people, there are still great connections to be made and friendships that, I mean, these people stood in my wedding. They've been at every gathering I could ever start up or get together. So I don't know if that answered anything, but we can go.
I think it totally does, man. I mean, look, I think we all want to work with people that we like, right? It's like, when you, I mean, being a someone in a band, it's like, yeah, it's, you want to work with people. I mean, you want to work with people that challenge you, right? You talked about that. People that, kind of, the idea that you guys are coming together and trying to like impress each other, right? Because it's driving you to like, oh, well, how did they do that? And what, and you're learning, right? It's you're pushing each other to the next level of what you're trying to do. And I love that. I love the fact that when you start talking about music, you start talking about friendship first. I forget, there's a thing where it's like, there's like a couple of conditions of people that you want to play music with, and like the hang is a big important part of making music, because you could play with somebody that's, next level amazing musician in some way, shape, or form, but they're super awkward to hang out with and there's not a great hang. That might be the deal breaker, right? It's like, you can't have it cheap. You can have it, what is it? Cheap, easy, or fast, but you can only have two. I mean, I think you gotta have the hang, and then like, because people grow, right?
Yeah.
I know musicians, when I first started playing with them, they were like, all right. And maybe I was probably I'm sure when I first started playing, there's a couple groups I can think of where I got into it and I was like, I'm definitely the weak link here, but they liked me enough.
200%. I understand.
They liked me enough to keep me around. And, boy, 6 months to a year later, after playing with a group of musicians, you really start to, grow. So the hang has to be there. So I love that you mention the friendship part. And, I think that's really powerful, actually. So yeah, you totally answered the question, man. You play a ton of different instruments. I mean, do you, what, I see a bass back there. Obviously you're an electronic musician, but do you have a, like, what's your favorite thing to do? It could be instrument or it could
Don't
be,
do that to me.
you don't have a favorite, do you? You love
Don't
it
do
all.
that to me.
I'm pressing you on the,
It it's yeah, I don't think I have a favorite. Um I will say there are many days that I spend thinking about my diversity actually being a debilitation, um because I love my bass. I've been playing bass probably longer than I've been playing any other instrument other than guitar, but the bass I've actually been trained in. I played in orchestras for 13 years. I've played around the world with that. Thank you, here on high school. Uh, but I don't know. I go where like I'm good with certain chords on the guitar. So like if I hear something in a certain way, I might go to the guitar and play it. Um, I play more melodies on keys. So if like I hear a specific melody, I might, or a specific like not crazy bass line, I might go to the keys and I'll like get an electronic bass. Or I do a lot of math rock with bass stuff with my band Whitby. And so when I hear really weird polyrhythms, I usually end up on my bass. So I think rather than a favorite, I've just got a different instrument for whatever is coming inspirationally.
I love
Um,
that, man. It's funny that you are almost thinking of it, of your, of that as like a, I don't, deficit wasn't the word you used, but it was like, but you,
Debilitation.
yeah,
Is that
debilitation.
true?
Yeah, it could, I think, I think it works.
I get
Um,
it.
I think that's
If you guys get
fascinating.
it, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, coming from somebody who, like, people ask me what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm a guitar, I play guitar. I'm a guitarist. I I don't, like, when I hear things, it's mostly I'm hearing it in guitar, and I actually think sometimes that's my debilitation because I because I don't gravitate towards, another instrument out of the gate. I have to force myself to do it.
Yeah.
So I actually think that's really cool, and I I admire that. So, and I think that's what's interesting about how everybody's brain works differently. You mentioned ADD, and it's like that can be a strength in that way, right? Because you experiment
Someday.
with these different sounds, and you get some different things happening. um, there are days where I feel very one dimensional in what I achieve, although I do use effects and pedals to augment, and I try to find ways to make my guitar sound like not a guitar. So,
Right?
you'll hear some stuff from the day nights where there's, you can't hear my guitar because it doesn't sound like one. But that's how I get around that, right? Like, I'm still playing the
Yeah.
guitar, but
Well, that's the
you know,
playful, man.
yeah,
That's being
that
like
is the playful
playful
part.
with that sound is just filling the act. That's I think that's the biggest thing that I've gained out of production is just remembering that you might have your guitar, but there's this whole waveform of space, like frequency space that has to be filled. And you can put drums, guitar, another guitar, and a bass in that waveform, and it's still not filled. Or even if you put vocals in there and layer the vocals and layer everything, it might not be filled until you hit on the chorus pedal. And all of a sudden, it's just getting that like 2 or 3 thousand hertz of space that just wasn't filled before. So, like being playful with all of that stuff is just that's the way to go. It's just the
Yeah.
way to go.
I think it's a great point. And sometimes it's like filling it where it needs to be filled, and sometimes it's taking it away too, right? It's the
Totally.
editing where you're like, oh, you put that sound in and you fill up that area, and then you're like, okay, well, and then you take something away, and then you're like, boom, there it is. um if it's a little like cooking sometimes. It's like seasonings. I
Yeah.
love
Oh,
it.
yeah. And more often than not, less is more. So
Yeah. Yeah,
For
it's good. It's a good point. I think it was Miles Davis that said sometimes it's the notes that you don't play
yeah.
too. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
appreciate that, man. I really like where you come from musically, man. It's super cool to get a chance to talk. I know a lot of times when we're at the studio, I'm coming in, you're going out, we're just kind of crossing paths, but I love rapping about this stuff. We're
Sure.
kind of stuck on gear a little bit, and I know I asked you about favorite instrument, but is there a piece of equipment that you like couldn't do without, that you're like highly recommend that somebody has if they were making electronic music, for example?
That is a good question. I can give you guys a little bit of a tour. Let me grab my camera here. If this works, otherwise it's gonna be super dumb. Can you guys see this at all?
Oh yeah, yep.
All right, so I've got the APC 40 mini or MK2. I really love this thing, especially for both my electronic production and my live production, because you can just arm and disarm tracks like that. Um, that's super fun. It's also great for live looping. Uh, Obviously, having a good MIDI keyboard is great. The Nano Control 2, which is right there, that little white thing. It's easily mappable in Ableton. I'm sure it's easily mappable in almost every DAW out there, but I only know Ableton. A good interface is definitely important. This is the Scarlett 18i20. It's by Focusrite. You can get the Scarlett 2i2 for probably like 150, brand new. It's probably a little less used, and they're always used. Um, Guitar pedals, which Rick, I'm sure you can appreciate. It's pretty impossible to live without those.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
you can do it, but
you can do
it's
it.
in
You
some
can do
ways
it.
less interesting.
It's way less interesting. Um, these are two newer pieces of gear that I've got. I've got an Ovation Base Station 2. This guy up, the big black and blue guy up there. It's just a monophonic analog synthesizer. It's just super fun to turn knobs and make weird noises. Uh, that's definitely been a huge inspiration in a lot of my new techno stuff. And then I've got this little Korg Vocal Beats, which is an analog drum synthesizer, or it's technically digital synthesis, but um, that's a whole another school of things that I still am not 100% on. So as far as like single thing that is necessary, I don't think there is one. A person that I look up to greatly uh, told me that you can do everything you want with what you've got. You just got to figure it out. And that's the best way not to spend money. So do that.
It's a good
Uh,
point.
Yeah, gear can be expensive, man. I
yeah.
saw
Oh,
you got
yeah.
the KRK monitors.
I do.
How do you like those, man? I have those as well.
I have the Rocket Fives right now, and I got them off a buddy of mine. They're pretty instrumental. I think as far as the Rocket Fives go, I still would need a sub. I lose a lot of low end frequencies, and especially in dance music, uh, you got to worry about how the sub is sitting, because when you get put on larger subs, it's going to show all the stuff that you're not hearing right now. So
Mhm.
if you're doing general production, I think the Rocket Fives are pretty great. Um, I would probably go with the Rocket Eights if I could. I just don't have the funds for it right
Hey.
now. So
Yeah, they're expensive, and even the eights. Like I have the eights, and they like a lot of the time my bass will end up being too loud because it sounds great like in the monitor.
yeah.
You go, you're like,
You always
oh
got to remember that the normal person doesn't have those speakers. So
yeah,
you gotta I'm starting to really understand why people have 4 sets of speakers in their studio so
yeah,
that they can have the eights and say, yeah, like that's what I'm hearing. That's like the true sound. And then flip on the grandpa's old computer monitors. You can now hear what the normal Joe Schmo is going to have in their headphones that don't have any frequency range. Um, and you can know that your track still sounds good in that.
yeah, super important. So yeah, that's one of my big things. I always check my tracks in my car and Apple headphones,
Oh,
phone speaker, a bunch of different things. You talked about being from Huron, from Ann Arbor. I'm from Ann Arbor as well. I went to Pioneer. But
other
I was just
school.
wondering, how has Ann Arbor shaped you as a person and your music? Has it had a big influence on you?
It absolutely has. Is it something I've thought about a whole bunch? Absolutely not. I don't know why. But I think this is going to be really weird because you definitely don't hear any of these elements other than the offbeat hi-hats. But ska greatly influenced my musical life.
Mhm.
Ann Arbor was a huge part of that because they used to have ska fests at the Neutral Zone um, every year. And I hung out with Catch 22. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know who they were at the time, stupidly. But there I was hanging out with them and uh, looking at my friends now who are the Scafia ended up going on, and Reed went on to create We Are the Union, who's a prominent ska band right now. Uh, that that definitely influenced my opinion of how when you play a show, you're playing for the people who are there. If they're not having a good time, it's not a good show. Whether or not you're playing perfectly or to the set you thought was the most dope, like if the people aren't having a good time, it wasn't really great. So I think that actually led me to dance music a lot was Ska Fest, and from that, which ska being more the odd man out genre, uh, I think it's also led me very much to just have an open mind. I mean, you got great few great record stores, great the B side always had great shows, um, and still now just a very diverse range of shows and genres being available. Um, can't really ask for a better town than that.
Yeah, I know. I love talking to you both about, growing up in Ann Arbor. I didn't come to Ann Arbor, gosh, until I was probably I was like 18 or 19. But that's one of the reasons I moved to this area, because I knew there was a scene. I knew, some friends had older brothers and sisters that came out this way for school and things like that. And I always had this, kind of a little bit of an infatuation with the area, and I came out here and stuck around. And I love hearing the love of this stuff. And the ska thing just reminded me of Mustard Plug was a band that I remember seeing them at like Cross Street Station, in Ipsy back in the day. And, I knew a little bit about ska. I mean, I was kind of a punk rock kid at the time. So ska was like on my roadmap, it was kind of like I could see it. And I remember seeing those guys and like realizing that there was a ska scene, which I didn't know when I moved. So that's another thing I love about, this part of the state is it's just the diversity of music that's happening. It's really exciting. Um, you're doing some great stuff. Like I'm really excited to see what you do next. I know the podcast thing is coming up. That's exciting. Everything's a
Yeah.
little uncertain right now. We don't know exactly when we'll be able to legally be open again.
Right.
You know, because we get that announcement from the governor, and we're hopeful that it's soon. I'm glad that we're staying safe out there. And
Yeah.
what's next though? I mean, the podcast. I mean, is there any big things? I know you mentioned an album that you've been working on. Are you trying to lock that down? What's happening next?
So I'm gonna discuss this a lot in the podcast, which is just trying to find out what the right path is for a at-home producer. Uh, there's no real literature out there. There's a lot of people like saying, "Here's how you make it," and then there's a lot of people saying, "Here's how you get cred." And I feel like uh, along with this conversation I had yesterday with a good inspiration of mine, cred is like you're putting it out because it's you, and making it is like you're selling out, which I don't know. I just trying to shoot a good medium and figuring out what's going on. That's just where I'm at. This whole album that I was thinking of, there was gonna be a 12 or 13 song album, but I've since kind of felt like I'm just gonna put it out when it's done. Because if you're I don't know, if you're looking for consistent followers or any like plays, then you need to be consistent. And there's this whole game with social media or internet plays, and it doesn't necessarily seem like the place I want to be. I don't want to have to decide my music coming out in a certain way because of that. But at the same time, it's like, well, if it's going to get my music to more ears for the people who do need to hear it, or for the people who want to hear it and like say like, oh man, that's what I needed to hear. Um, is that not the right way to do it?
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's definitely what I'm gonna like. That's something I want to talk about. It's something I want to bring people into my podcast is going to be all about this stuff. Is just like when you're approaching this musical world, which is ever changing and changing every year or so as new technology comes out. uh I want to talk about like what everyone's doing or what everyone thinks about it, or what is still like cred worthy, or what is still just like the best way to monetize. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to cover everything, and that's kind of where my head keeps being ADD, I guess.
Yeah, but I think that's cool. I think it almost sounds like what you're doing is I think I heard you say something around like you're almost documenting the process that you're going through
Yeah.
as you try to figure out how to do it. And I think that's a cool concept. I think that angle, it feels unique to me. I don't necessarily know anybody, and I haven't like searched for that specific thing, but um, I'm a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk. He's tech entrepreneur. If you know Gary V, you either love him or you hate him. I
I dig
like him.
him.
Yeah,
I got over the hump. I dig him.
yeah. I mean, you can't maybe can't hear him too much, but like he's got a lot of really smart stuff. And one of the things he always talks about is document, don't create. And I think you can curate something and like make it this perfect thing, and that might take you years, but maybe documenting as you go through the process and as you create. I think that there's a lot of value to that, and I personally look forward to that. I would listen to that podcast. So
I
um
appreciate that.
yeah, I'm looking for. Well, you're gonna love the podcast room. The gear in there sounds fantastic. It's comfortable. I
I've
can't.
already been like researching the your gear in there obsessively, and like
Yeah,
trying to
good,
do
man.
the if I need to add more microphones, how do I do that? And
Yeah.
like, yeah, no, it I'm still very stoked for it. And I was watching you guys when you were talking with Dan, and I've been watching. I've been doing his um, webinar, which again, thank you so much.
Oh yeah, man.
Crazy.
So glad that it went to
Really
you, man.
blessed.
Yeah, yeah. Likewise.
Got the-
Couldn't have gone to a better person. We're glad that you won, and I'm really looking forward to your podcast. I'm looking forward to the album. You know, Waylau, is there anything else that you want to share with the community before we sign off, man?
No, I mean, for the most part, you guys, I just want you guys to keep pushing the way you are. And if you, hopefully by now, you've now heard of Grove, and Grove Studios is amazing. They've given me and the bands I've been in multiple opportunities for everything. So mostly I just want to hear that people are hearing about you guys, and I'm going to keep spamming this video all forever now.
We appreciate that, man. That means a
yeah.
lot to us. You know, it's why we exist. You know what I mean? We started this because we're musicians and we want to help people make music and now podcasts.
Yep.
We're super grateful for you, Ian. We're super grateful that you took the time. Again, Waylau, that's SoundCloud. What is it officially? SoundCloud
/ Waylau, I believe.
/ Waylau. And you can also, yeah, there's tons of music on there to listen to. I highly recommend. It's Friday night. It's great music. Thank you for sharing with us today, man. We're looking forward to seeing you IRL very soon.
Yeah.
And thank you for everything you're doing on the mid front lines, as I think you said too, man.
Yeah.
We know that can be stressful. Most definitely. I have some family in healthcare, and I know that they're going through it. So thank you for everything you do for the community. And we'll see you very soon. I feel like we're going to lift and we're going to get there. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
I'll be bugging you guys whether you want to hear from me or not. So
No bother, man. We appreciate when you bug us, and you know where to find us. We're going to be here again on Sunday. So if you're around, dig into the stream. We're going to have this Sunday, we're going to do, let's see, that's Brett Crandall, our one of our co-founders. He's our architect partner, and he's going to be talking about architecture and the shipping container concept that we're working on. And I know Ian's excited about that as well.
yeah.
We're going to be also coming up. We're going to be doing an interview with Timothy Blackman, Detroit producer, videographer, and general Renaissance man. And then we're a little self-serving, but we're going to be doing an interview with the Day Nights, which is my band. So Max is going to be throwing questions at us. So I'm going to be sitting in your hot seat before too long. But those are all coming up, man. So yeah, let us know if we can help, and we're looking forward to doing more work with you. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Have a great night, everybody. Grove Sessions,
Friday
Friday night. We'll see you on Sunday at 2:00 for an interview with our co-founder, Brett Crandall. Have a great night, everybody.